buffet. Said, you skinny people don't get the idea of a buffet. It's all you can eat, people. You get behind this person and they're going, it's all you can eat, people. It's just like, and then his thing about, I'm a fat guy and I live in Las Vegas. So said I finally was able to get them to bring out and install at my house one of those air conditioning units they normally put on the top of 40-story buildings. And said, I felt so justified the day I turned that thing on and the neighborhood experienced a brownout. No. I think she's planning on coming. She's probably back there. I'm okay. I'm okay. What? I was gonna say, when is the thing? Oh wow. He does, barely, but he does. Well, according to my Mickey Mouse, it's about 6:30, maybe a little bit after that, so we'll go ahead and get started officially. Let me highlight a couple of things on our prayer requests. Just remember, today was Donna Patterson's funeral, and so keep Richard in your mind and the rest of their family. We'll, of course, mention that in our prayer. So, again, those services were held earlier today. A couple of folks that are new in our prayer list here, at least new from, I tried to pay attention Sunday, but I may not have gotten everything written down. Jeff Cousins, who is Dan Shepard's brother-in-law, had back surgery and is in recovery from that. Some of you may know him, not necessarily through the connection with Dan, but as well, he's part of the Friday morning men's Bible study. Heather Campbell's coworker, Denise Esparza, diagnosed with breast cancer. Want to continue to remember John Height did, kind of recovering from his surgery for melanoma. Let's see, what else was somewhat new? Leslie Ward's aunt, Sandra Stanfill, having heart problems. Keith Bingham has a couple of friends with heart issues. We talked about Glenn Miller before. James Thompson is another friend of Keith's that suffered a heart attack, and want to keep them in our prayers. Let's go ahead and pray for these folks. After we pray for them, come back and give you some announcements, and then we'll get going on what we're going to do today. Father God, be with us tonight. Help us to, as in many rooms in this building, there are people studying your word. Make your word come alive in whatever setting that's in. Ask you to be with some folks who need your presence in their lives. We ask you to be present to Richard Patterson and his family in the passing of Donna. Thank you for those who came alongside them today to be with them as they formally said goodbye. Father, we ask you to be with Sharon Bingham and her ongoing chemotherapy, with John Kleiss and his pancreatic cancer. Father, we ask you to be with Mark Cockrell, Carolyn Coomer's son, with his issues. Please bring healing to Jeff Cousins, Dan's brother-in-law. Also bring healing to Heather's coworker, Denise. Be with John Height as he recovers from his surgery. Continue to be with others we've been concerned about for a while. Carolyn Holloway's brother-in-law, Cindy Marlar, Elizabeth Newsom. Be with those who are in hospice care, like Jean Ann's mother, Faye, like Cheryl's sister, Cindy. We ask that you would be with Zeke Rivers in hospice care. Continue to be with them. Be with folks who've come to our attention because they're friends or relatives of folks who are a part of our number. Thinking of Leslie's aunt, Sandra Stanfill, Keith's friends, Glenn, who's already been having some heart issues, and his friend James, who's now in serious condition following a heart attack. Bring healing wherever that's possible. Bring comfort always. Raise up for people to come alongside these folks to stand with them as they deal with difficult issues. It's through Christ we pray. Amen. In terms of announcements, this Sunday is Giving Sunday. It's an opportunity provided each year to make up or add to your regular contribution. If you're in a better financial position than maybe earlier in the year when you decided what you would be giving, and also maybe a chance to address some specific needs. Simply an opportunity to share as you have prospered. So Sunday is Giving Sunday. The Bartlett Area Chorus Christmas Concert is Thursday, December the 7th, 7 p.m. at Grace Presbyterian Church. That's 6671 Yale Road. Free admission, so the price is right, and you can support our Oliver Creek members who participate in this group. By the way, I will leave this up here so you can check addresses and things like that later. Blood Drive, Sunday, December the 10th from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Please sign up in the lobby or online, and that information, obviously the sign-up sheets and information on how to do that online or in the lobby. Grief Share, Surviving the Holidays, is a one-time session for people grieving the loss of a loved one, providing help for navigating the holiday season. The session is free. It'll be on Wednesday, December the 13th, 6:30 p.m. Share this with anyone who might benefit from this opportunity. And finally, help is needed tonight after class to put away the tables in the fellowship hall. So please help out if you can. Again, I'll leave this up here so you can check that if you need to after class, but some stuff coming up. Now, speaking of class, hopefully you have picked up one of the little pieces of paper on the little table in the back as you walked in. And if you didn't, that's because I didn't put some sort of a sign on there that said, "Pick me up." So we'll remember that. We're going to pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago. We were so rudely interrupted by a holiday last week. But we're talking about holidays. Happy holidays. And remember the idea of holiday. Literally, the word is derived from the idea of a holy day, a day that's set apart. And these holy days that God baked into Israel's annual calendar are, in fact, a little bit of taste of what it'll be like when God sets everything straight, a taste of the way God intends things to be. So, I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that there is a compendium of these holy days, these holidays found in Leviticus, which of course is everyone's favorite book. And I know after we went over Leviticus a couple of weeks ago, you went home and you thought, wow, Leviticus almost sounds interesting. I'm going to read Leviticus. And you got to about chapter 3. That's okay, all right? We'll just make a little bit of reference to that to get us up to speed on that again tonight. The canonical question that Leviticus is answering is, how are you going to be able to stay close to this holy God? Right at the end of Exodus, right at the end of Exodus, this tent has been constructed that's going to be kind of where God lives with the people as they wander through the desert. This is going to be the place that is going to be where God connects to his people. But right at the end of Exodus, God's holiness comes down, fills the tabernacle. Not even Moses can enter in. And you're thinking, wait a minute, where has Moses been for much of the book of Exodus? With God, up on the mountain. And yet, when God comes to the tabernacle, it's as if the glory of God is so intense that not even Moses can go in. And so you're left with this question at the end of Exodus, not a written question, but sort of an unasked question there. How on earth are these people going to be able to live in the presence of a holy God? If God's holiness and glory is so intense that not even Moses can enter into that presence, how on earth are these whole people, how are they going to be able to stay close to this holy God? And the answer is, canonically, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, we move into Leviticus, and you have these rituals, and you've got the priests who are going to provide direction and assistance in the performing of the rituals and in understanding God and that sort of thing, and in maintaining purity. So rituals, priests, purity are going to be three categories that we noted in the structure of Leviticus. You kind of create this X marks the spot sort of thing. You've got some rituals at the first part of the book. At the last part of the book, you've got some stuff about the priests and how they're supposed to do their job in helping the people stay connected to God in kind of places. The second part of the book and the second to last part of the book, you've got stuff on purity and what it means to be pure. The third part of the book and the third to last part of the book. And right smack dab in the middle of this, you have this thing we call the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur. The day in which Israel's sins are wiped out, which is a pretty, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say a pretty significant thing. The day on which everything that would keep them from being in God's presence is eliminated. So remember, if our canonical question that the book of Leviticus is answering is how are we going to be able to stay close to this God, in a sense it's like, hey, God's going to take care of that. There's going to be a day when we remove everything that keeps us from being able to be in God's holy presence, which is, super. But then you've got sort of got a question that gets raised there. If on the Day of Atonement, how many times a year does that happen? Once, one time a year. Okay, so wait. What about the other 300 and, in their case, 359 days of the year? In our case, 364 days of the year, unless it's leap year. 365 days of the year. What are we going to do then? And so you've got this idea of how are we going to keep this? How are we going to keep this sense of holiness, of set apartness, of being able to be in God's presence and to live with this God? Some of you may know the old story about the founding father, Benjamin Franklin. As he came out one day from the Constitutional Convention, someone said, "What kind of government are we going to have?" And his answer supposedly was, "A republic if you can keep it." And so you've kind of got that idea coming out of the Day of Atonement. You've just, Israel, been placed in this position of utmost holiness, cleanness before God. How are you going to keep that up? Well, that's where our other points of our little, X marks the spot here come into effect. It's these rituals. Okay, you mess up between now and the next Day of Atonement. You've got a ritual that will help you to address that, to show that you are responding in a way that says, I want to stay in this relationship with God. You've got the priests whose job is to continue the process of giving you direction in how to do that and to aid you in how to stay in this relationship if the priests are doing their job as they should. And then you've got these various laws about, here's some things to avoid, some things not to do, some things to do if you want to maintain your purity. Some of them, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, don't make a whole lot of sense to us, like why some animals are clean to eat and some aren't. Here's my theological answer to that. I don't know. It is. But there are some things that if you eat them or touch them or do anything related to them, they will make you unclean, which is probably not the most helpful terminology, but it's the one we've gotten used to. But I use the word impure, as opposed to you are not matching a purity that will let you be in God's presence. Now, we have typically thought, my red just isn't doing a really good job today. How about we switch to purple? We've typically thought impurity or uncleanness equals sin. We talked about this a little bit 2 weeks ago, but it's important and we need to kind of underscore it. Here's the reality. Not everything that is labeled a purity issue, if you do this, you will be impure, is a sin. Woman has a baby. She is impure for a certain amount of time. Is that a sin to have a baby? Wow, we're going really big on us there, pulling in 1 Timothy. You got this notion of no, this is not a sin, but it renders you ceremonially impure for a period of time. It's usually about 7 days, depending on the situation, and then there might be some sort of ritual washing or sacrifice that needs to be offered, or both, or something, or just the passing of time. And the purity is restored. Someone in your family dies. You need to take care of the body, but touching a body makes you, a dead body, makes you impure. Is it a sin that you took care of them and prepared them for burial? No, goodness no. You have performed a service to them and to the community in doing that. So not everything that renders you impure is sin, okay? And I think that's important for whatever reasons we think we've gotten the impression that if it rendered you unclean or impure, there was something sinful about it. That's simply not the case. Never was not the understanding. A lot of the things, besides some of the animals and things like that, a lot of the things that render you impure, like certain bodily discharges, handling the bodies of people who have died, the being present and handling the things that happen when a child is born, particularly in a non-hospital setting, and those sorts of things that will render you ritually impure. A lot of those things seem to have to do with issues of life and death. And I think I may have said this 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I've slept artificially even since then, so I'm not for sure. But the whole idea of life and death, it seems to me that God is saying you always treat the things that have to do with life and death, you treat those things in as sacred a way as possible. There's something special, there's something unique, there's something critically important about that, so you treat that in a special way. So even a woman's menstrual time, or a man's nocturnal emission even is addressed. Things that have to do with the building blocks of life and death, we're going to treat those in a special way. There's something sacred about life. Some of the animals still don't know about, but anyway, those are some of the things that would render you impure. Now, on the other hand, there is a connection between sin and impurity in that, now I've forgotten, I've slept since I had algebra, but some equations are not reciprocal, if I remember the terminology. All sin, however, renders you what? Impure. So this is true, but this idea that somehow we've gotten that if you're impure, that must mean you are sinful, no. That was never an issue. Hopefully that we've made that confusing enough, we can go on. So we get to Leviticus 23 finally. That was part of where we were headed a couple of weeks ago. Didn't get there. That's where we have this compendium of markers on the calendar for Israel. And if you got a Bible with you, that would be great because I'm going to need your help on some of this. You've been made pure on the Day of Atonement. Can you keep living in that purity, keep living in that connection? That seems to be part of the issue thing. So how we're gonna live in the presence of this holy God. Part of that are these rituals that have to do with holidays, holy days, days that are set apart. And several are outlined for us in Leviticus 23. This is how the chapter begins. I'll just read verses 1 and 2, and then I'm going to let you all do some work on some aspects of this. Leviticus 23, verses 1 and 2. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, these are the appointed festivals of the Lord." These are Yahweh's days. These are Yahweh's celebrations that you shall proclaim as holy convocations, my appointed festivals. These are times for you to all get together in some way. That idea of convocation. So here's what I'd like for us to do. We'll set up this. Let me grab my very special non-smear eraser here. Only the most high-tech. Let me get that out of the way. We'll start with chapter 23 of Leviticus and verse 3. And go ahead and sort of establish this. Put this at the top of the table. So we got Leviticus 23. Verse 3 gives us some information about stuff we already know. For 6 days you shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord throughout your settlements. Now, settlements. Whoa. That points us in a direction here. Just mention in passing and then come back to this. Right now, as they're hearing this from Moses, I mean, God is saying, hey, Moses, tell the people this, and Moses goes and tells the people this. Where are the people? In the wilderness, specifically, camped around the bottom of Mount Sinai. Are they settled yet? So God's giving them all of this stuff and saying, this is what I want your calendar to look like. You know, it's going to be easy enough for you to follow me when you have to literally follow me, you know, through the wilderness. These are the ways you're going to stay in touch with me when you are in your settlements. So this is looking to the future, and you'll notice that there's a lot of this language throughout your settlements, and we'll see throughout your days. But every seventh day, already talked about that, every seventh day there's a Sabbath. There's a day set apart where you don't have to work. And in the ancient Near East, if you wanted to eat, what did you have to do? Work, you know. But we're going to trust that God is going to take care of us. We are going to take this day. We're not going to have to work 24/7, 365. We can take a day just to rest in God's presence, and to rest trusting that God is going to take care of us. Interesting that sort of sets the tone for this. Here's what I'd like for us to do. It does not matter. Can I have, would like for you to work in groups on this. Let me see, what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. This will be the simplest way to do it, and it will also require us to get up and move, which means we won't fall asleep. We'll start all over here. We got a 1, we got a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we'll let you guys stay together in some way so you don't have to run around. And, you know, besides, you've got a hard enough time keeping up with Tim as it is. So we'll let you do that. So 1, back to you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s get together. Find each other. How you do it is up to you. Okay? That's a good way right there, Cody, you know. And plus you are tall. That's very good. Get the 1s together, get the 2s together, and I'll tell you what you need to do. Sounds like we're doing some bidding here or something. Ones to get together, 2s get together, 3s get together, 4s get together, 5s get together, 6 gets together, 7s. Once you find your people, let me know. All right, everybody got your people? I am so glad you got your people, because at this point you are now responsible for these other people. They will not make it to heaven without you. Okay, all All right, something like that. Or we at least will not make it through class tonight without you. All right, if you are in group number 1 and you have Leviticus 23, I need you to look at verses 4 through 8. And I'll tell you in just a minute what you need to be looking for. If you are in, this is going to be the easiest way to do this.
Like 7 doesn't have any.
Does 7 not have any? 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow. Wow. You'll just have to read the whole chapter and come up with this. Oh, you'll join in with, actually, it's going to be related, but I'll give you... You don't?
I do.
You do? We'll give you all 39 through 42. Okay, so that's why I'm not a math teacher. I can't. So group 1, group 2, you've got 9 through 14, 3, 15 through 22, 4, 23 through 25, 5, 26, beginning 6, 33 through 36, and 7, 39 through 42. Now, here's the deal. What I would like for you to go through and look for in your appointed text is what is the festival or the day, just the holiday that's being set up there, okay? Just if there's a name given for it, a name. If there's a description, and how long does it last? Is it 1 day? Is it 7 days, 8 days, whatever, 2 Sabbaths and the week in between? How long does it last? And if you see that, kind of what is it designed to bring to mind for the people? What is it supposed to bring to mind for the people? So I'm looking for what it is, the name, looking for the duration, and looking for what's the point. And you don't have to get all of these right to go to heaven, all right? You just trying to get you to think. All right, I'm going to turn you loose on that. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes, and then I'll see how we stand. And if we need more time, we can take it. Otherwise, not. So, everyone clear? Anybody? Any quick? Okay, cool. No questions. I love it. It's 140. Yes, ma'am.
We're looking for a new oven for my dad's house. It's on the market. And I'm looking at different things online. And one of them says Sabbath mode. What is a Sabbath mode? I said you could tell him after.
I don't know.
So I look up what is Sabbath mode on an oven. And it says it will stay on for more than 12 hours on warm. So you can't heat anything. But you can put it in there before Sabbath starts and it will keep it warm.
Oh my goodness.
3 days.
Oh my goodness. I did not know such a thing.
Yeah. Who knew?
Yes, of course you can be doing that. Yes. So, is it kosher though?
Well, I mean, you gotta have two. You gotta have two ovens.
Okay.
No hog roasts. No hog roasts.
Oh. Ah. Too soon.
Two sinks, two stoves, two refrigerators.
About 10 seconds, I'll check in. Take a nap until then, that's right. All right, thumbs up if you think you've got something to do, something to give us answers. Thumbs up, thumbs down if you're not. I'm seeing a lot of, all right, we'll give it a shot. Okay, where's my group one? My group one. So what's going on here? What is this thing, what is this holiday that is set up?
The holiday Passover.
Passover. All right, so we've got Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay, and how long does that last?
7 days.
7 days. Now, what's the point? What do you think is the point? Best guess will do. We don't have to.
To remind them of when they were in captivity and the Spirit of God passed over and did not kill them, and they had to prepare quickly to leave, and therefore they couldn't make bread without leavening because they didn't have time to rise and get the package.
And so they literally reenact once a year this thing that they had to do the night before they were delivered from slavery in Egypt. So it's a reminder of that delivery. Good. Team one has set a high standard. How about where are my twos? Where are my twos? Twos? So what do we have in verses 9 through 14? What do we have there? Notice it says, when you enter the land. So it's anticipating. You're not there yet. You haven't had a harvest yet. But when you enter the land, you've had a harvest, what are you supposed to do? Okay. Give us an example. Ooh, I'm so glad. Aren't you also glad that there are headers in the... That's such a good thing. And then you don't actually have to, But it's a festival that comes to be called Festival of First Fruits. What's one of the things that you offer a number of things? You all are spot on. You offer a number of things. A sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest. Okay? So whatever you've gathered in your field, you take a sheaf of that to the priest of the first fruits. He shall raise the sheaf before the Lord. Then you also, that on the day you raise the sheaf, you shall offer a lamb a year old without blemish as a burnt offering to the Lord. And the grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah of choice flour mixed with oil. Where do you get flour? Ground up, grain. Where do you get oil? You've pressed it from the olives or from whatever you might be getting an offering by fire of pleasing odor to the Lord. You have a drink offering, it's called, which will be wine. Where do you get your wine from? Not Kroger.
Fresh grapes.
Fresh grapes, okay? So you get your wine from grapes. Where have grapes come from? You've grown them, okay? And you've let them ferment. So this is a process. 1/4 of a hin. A hin was not, that's, I don't want to cluck about that, but a hin is, a measure of liquid. All right. It's interesting, you shall eat no bread or parched grain or fresh ears until that very day. It's like we're still living off what we got from last year's harvest until we get to this time and we're going to offer these first fruits. Now, by the way, you think, oh my goodness, so these people, did they all have to come up with all of this? Some commentators think that maybe some of this was just like a community sort of offering. But the idea is, well, what is the idea? First of all, duration. Did we talk about that any? It does seem to be just a sort of a one-day sort of thing, but it's a one day that is the culmination of a lot of stuff. It's a harvest festival. What do you think the point of doing that, of taking stuff that you've harvested, stuff that's from the animals you've been tending for the last year, or whatever, the stuff that you've got from this growing season? What do you think would be the point? We'll go to group 2 first. What do you think the point of that would be, that you offer that to God?
I think acknowledge that God's provided.
Ding, 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 ding. That is correct. You have saved your team. The idea of God's provision, we can just put it that way. Yeah. This is a recognition that God has provided this for us. Yes, sir.
Are we to interpret that we're taking the time for them to actually gather up the harvest that they made, or they're going into a land where they did nothing and they're gathering stuff that other people?
Eventually, this is going to be stuff they've gathered, that they have put the sweat equity in. And it's just like okay, so you've come to the end of this, and you're recognizing this is all ultimately from God. This is all because of how God is. Because again, remember, they're encamped around the base of Mount Sinai right now, but they're being given instructions about once you get in the land. Now, at this point, did they know they were going to be wandering for a generation? No, they thought this is going to be, maybe this time next year, or certainly, a year and a half, 2 years from now, this is going to be where we are. Fortunately, that's not what worked out. But it's a chance for them to say, hey, God, we are being reminded by this holiday that God is the one that's provided for us. We're taking time to recognize that formally as a people. Good question. Good question. Yeah, Tim?
First fruits of harvest. Some things are harvested in June and July and August and September.
Mm-hmm.
We get our harvest in October probably.
Certainly in this hemisphere.
Yes, but grapes, which you do harvest in July,
Mm-hmm.
and you have time to ferment them so that when the traditional harvest would be at the end of summer,
You could be that.
fermented. So
Yeah.
it's not like you've got to ferment it overnight.
Right.
Don't have any vinegar probably. Do that.
Yeah, I don't know that you would want that, But yeah, it's interesting that you have a day, and we're going to see there's some other things that are going to be tied into their agricultural calendar. But we're going to make sure we recognize that God has provided for us. There's going to be a formal way for us to do that as a people. Good. Where are my threes? Over here, the threes. So what do we got next once we get to 15 through 22? You all had kind of a tough one, to be honest.
Festival of the Week,
Okay?
or Harvest, or Pentecost.
Aha. Let's go ahead and put Pentecost, because we are familiar with that from New Testament. That's just easy. But the idea of the weeks, very good. So how long does that last?
1 day.
And if I remember correctly, but I have. Yeah. What was I thinking? Yeah, good. So What are some of the things that you might do on that day?
Sacrifice the first fruits of the wheat harvest,
Okay.
and several animal sacrifices as well.
And again, the idea being you think, oh my goodness, for just a family, that's asking them to give up a lot. So again, some of this might be communal, okay? But there is a recognition that there's a lot of stuff going on here that again, what would you say is the point?
I think giving thanks for the harvest kind of answers it.
Yeah. So again, in an agricultural setting, one of the things that's baked into Israel's annual stuff is every time we're celebrating kind of a new phase of the harvest, as Tim has pointed out, we're taking time to officially mark that and mark that we recognize that God is the one that has made that possible for us. Okay, very good, excellent work. My fours. We got fours over here, fours. So you guys have 23 through 25. That's one of the more interesting ones. What did you all come up with that?
Can we go back to 3? I have a question about.
Ask away. I will not answer, but ask away.
Well, it says that they'll offer one male goat for a sin offering, so that it's more than.
So that's one of those days, right, where you're sort of saying, hey, when we talked 2 weeks ago with Leviticus, those sacrifices described in chapters 1 through 7, 2 types. One is just to say, hey, I messed up, I'm sorry. And that's one of these that's referenced. Have you probably done something you need to be sorry for?
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
so for the Feast of Weeks, it was not just the sacrifice were not just to thank God for what God had done for them, but it was also to say, I have sinned, forgiven.
Yeah, I think they're just throwing that. This is my take, and this and $5 will get you a $4 cup of coffee. I'm just thinking that is just an ongoing recognition of their dependence on God in all ways, in all things. You know, they're kind of throwing that in each of these, even though the major focus is, hey, we're remembering God's provision for us.
But that's the first time the word sin offering is used.
In this setting, yeah. That's good. Like I said, I would not answer the question, so, I don't know that but it's a good question. Yeah, good pickup, yeah. All right, group 4, interesting thing happens here. First day of the 7th month, what goes on?
Festival of Trumpets.
Okay,
Wes brought up that New Year. It was their
it's a thought. They had this unfortunately, for that's a good thought. Unfortunately, for that thought, they had the terrible habit of numbering their months in the order they came. So 7th month is, but here's an interesting thing. I think you may be close to something. Anyway, trumpets, how long did it last?
1 day.
1 day. And is there anything said in there about what's the point?
Well, this is kind of cool because Matthew Henry's commentary. And
What, we're bringing in other sources? I hadn't counted on that.
it was very close to the Day of Atonement. So, Matthew Henry thought that it was kind of designed to start setting the stage for that solemnity. That was kind of his take on it.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, I know. I think that, and I'm not going to push back on that. Do want to suggest one other interesting little thing here. Although they would have numbered it a little bit differently because of a lunar calendar, and that would require every so often a 13th month of the year. Okay? How many months of the year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 7th month. Sabbath happens on what day of the week? And I'm just kind of curious if it's just sort of like saying, all right, we're halfway through the year, let's just take a day to rest in God's presence. Again, just continuing that notion of we're recognizing that we are utterly dependent on God. We utterly trust Him, and that's okay. We can. And so we're just going to take a day when we can do that. I'm not going to push back against Matthew Henry, but I think there's, it's weird. There's not a lot said about what this is all about. And it is very close to the Day of Atonement, speaking of which, who are my fives? All right, so fives, what's your day? Day of Atonement. So we've already had instructions on the Day of Atonement, so you don't get a lot of instruction here because basically chapters 16 and 17 are all full of instruction on the Day of Atonement. But again, how long? One day of Atonement. I didn't put up here, what's the point? Someone in the 1 o'clock class said, it's just being like, hey, we can recognize we can take a day off. Someone said it's kind of like Labor Day. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I thought that was kind of, why do we have Labor Day? Well, we just have Labor Day, and we do no labor on Labor Day, So halfway through the year, we recognize, hey, we can still be totally dependent on God. Day of Atonement. So what's the point of that? You can rely on earlier notes. And what happens on the Day of Atonement? Yeah, sins wiped out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not getting into so much the things that are done on that day because it's kind of interesting because Sabbath, there are things you're not supposed to do. A lot of these festivals, there are things that you're supposed to do even as you rest in God's presence. Sins are wiped out, so this is the time that they are made pure. And again, remember that is here a technical term. We'll come back to that. Why is God, just ask this question at this point, why is God wanting them to be pure? If they are pure, then they can do what? Be in His presence, be with Him. All right, so let's move on to our 6s and 7s. Our 6s had 33 through 36. What's that all about? Where are my 6s? 6s, what do we got there? Booths or tabernacles. I am told, and I've not been there, by the way, how long does it last?
That's a matter.
Yeah, you've got like 2 Sabbaths. We'll put a week. You got one Sabbath and the other Sabbath at the end of it, which a lot of these 7-day festivals, actually, you've got one Sabbath starts it, one Sabbath ends it. So you've got booths. What do they do? Set up a booth. All right, very good. All right, let's move on. No, so they set up a booth. Now, this is where we probably need to pull in our 7s because 7s, what was your...
Well, they're commanded to live in those booths for 7 days.
Aha. Now, interesting that this gets mentioned twice, so we'll go ahead and put it up here twice. And also because I miscounted and I should have had 6 groups. But anyway, what does that living, once they've made it to the land and they're living in the land and they're harvesting stuff and they're remembering that God has provided for them and all like this, but they're living in these booths for 7 days to remind themselves of what time? The time in the wilderness, which at this point in Leviticus 23, we're hoping is not too long, but still they're living in tents, they're living in impermanent housing. Once you get into a more permanent setting, though, take 1 week out of the year to remember this time. We'll just go ahead and call it the wilderness time, to remember this time. And there's a lot that happens during this time. Who takes care of them during that time? God. It's always the right answer in Bible class. God is the one taking care of them. They are people, they're living in tents because they're people on a journey. They're people who are going from one place to another. They are not going to stop that just because they get in the land. They are still on a journey, even though now we might describe it more as a spiritual journey. And this is a way to stop and remember that. And it's interesting that you get this thing of it talks about the booths kind of in passing in your all's passage, right? But when we get to 7's passage, it talks about, getting the stuff together, the raw materials for that. And it's kind of interesting the way it puts that, the fruit of majestic trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, willows of the brook. And it's a time to do what with the Lord? Rejoice. Rejoice. This is a fun festival. This is a fun time. To be honest, are all of these all about fun? I'm sure people would find ways to have fun, But this is to be just a fun, just to celebrate being in relationship with God and that God's going to take care of you through all of that. And has done so. There's a track record here. Now we've got about 9 minutes, so if you can find your way back to original starting position, if you want, excellent job, everyone. I don't care what Tim says. I think everyone did a fine job on this,
You're talking about another thing.
Oh, another Tim. All right, yeah.
Can I point out something?
Yes.
You said that this wasn't probably just a family, it's probably communal.
Now, some of them, just in terms of the sacrifices on some of these days, yeah.
When they were roaming the desert, it's 2 million people. One of the counts is a little over 2 million people walking around in the desert after the 10 and 2. And when they get into the promised land and Joshua breaks up the land to the 12 tribes, it is amazing how far apart they are if you look on the map of where they were.
Yeah.
So it might have been communal that it's just that tribe and not all of Israel doing it.
That is possible. Now, given that the sacrifices were to be offered at pre-temple being built, the tabernacle, once the temple was built at the temple. But long story short, that there probably is some sense that are you just going to walk your bull all the way down from Dan all the way down to Jerusalem? You're probably going to. That's why some of these things, I think commentators who've looked back on these things have said, I think some of these sacrifices on some of these days were probably done communally.
When we get into Jesus' time, these people were traveling like the Ethiopian Union. It's a long ways from Ethiopia to Jerusalem.
Chances are he did not bring his sacrifices with him.
In the temple courts, they were selling the sacrifices.
Yep.
And what happened with Jesus and all that. But it was convenient that they didn't have to bring it, they could buy it.
Absolutely.
It was there for them.
Absolutely. Long story short, and we've talked about this in a couple of other class settings, so some of you may have heard this. When Jesus cleanses the temple, he's not mad that that's going on because those people are performing a service, a useful and needed service for people. What he's doing is a symbolic action that says what's going on in this temple is, it's not performing the function God intended for it to do. It is not drawing people closer to you because you guys aren't living outside of these precincts in a way that is he references Jeremiah 7, which makes that point. It's not what you do in the temple that's bad. It's the fact that you're coming to the temple thinking that makes up for the way you live the rest of your lives. That's a story for another class. Let's wrap up something here really, really quick. Are we commanded to do any of this stuff? No, I don't think so. Well, you know, I could do a vuvuzela. I don't know that I could do a trumpet, you know, if it came to that. That said, how do we take the spirit of this and in some way think, okay, God says it is important for you to take time out as your year flows by. It is important for you to take some time to be reminded of certain things. That is critical to your continuing the journey, to your continuing the process of growing in your relationship with me. So we've baked some things in here. Passover reminds you that you exist because God delivered you. Israel, you exist as a people because God delivered you. You're reminded of that every year. God provides for us. You're reminded of that more than once. Every year, you're reminded that God makes it possible for you to take time off and to just rest in His presence. Every year, you're reminded of that. You're reminded that God wants to be close to you and wants you to be in a state of purity to do that. Once a year, you're reminded of that. Once a year, you're reminded that under adverse conditions, God took care of you and brought you into the land and made it possible for you. This becomes the rhythm of Israel's life, that they're being reminded of this, reminded of this, reminded of this. And that has a shaping factor. Now, if we don't have this, do we have anything that is equivalent to this? What's that? Okay, Lord's Supper is go ahead and write in my red pen again, which doesn't write well, sorry. Lord's Supper, we're reminded of what in that? Sacrifice of Christ, which does, you know, I think we could draw some parallels to what they were being reminded of. It is the sacrifice of Christ that makes it possible for us to be in relationship with God. We are reminded of that. What else is baked into the rhythm of our lives?
In that it is communal. It isn't just a vertical, it is a horizontal relationship.
Very good. That this is something that you do with others, which gets us to this. Where do we do this with others? Okay, our assemblies, okay? And I know that I'm... This is the people on Wednesday night I'm talking to. Okay, so the assembly as a time in which we are reminded of who we are and where we've come from and where we're going, and that is a time of reminder for us. That's why in Hebrews the writer there says, you know, just be encouraging to one another to be there, to be part of that. It's important. There's some significance to it. Just as a good, faithful Jewish person in, let's say, 1st century BC would have thought, you know, well, of course I'm gonna go take part in the Passover celebration. Of course I'm gonna go take part in the Day of Atonement, because that's just part of who I am. You know, is this part of who we are that we're being reminded? Let me be a little bit directive in that our time is running out. We are not in our tradition, and in fact it makes some of us very nervous, but we are not church year people. We are not liturgical. You know, but here's the deal. I'll just go on record as saying, if the rest of the world has taken time to think about Jesus being born, I'm thinking let's seize that opportunity. And let's remind ourselves, you know, and let's say, look, you know, we are, as J.B. Phillips said, the visited planet. That's something amazing about that. Let's be reminded of that. Let's allow ourselves to be reminded by that so that we can be shaped by that. When we come to near Passover time each spring, and some of our religious neighbors more formally celebrate Easter. I don't have an issue with that. Let's remember, yes, we remember that every week with the Lord's Supper, but let's also say, look, here's a time when other people are thinking about that. Let's strike while the iron is hot. Let's say, my goodness, yes, that is, when you talk about Jesus coming into the world, God becoming incarnate, talk about that God incarnate living a life with us and then dying for us and conquering death. I think we need to think about those things. I'm just going to go out on a limb there and think that that's something that it's worth being reminded of.
It's Friday, but Sunday's coming.
But Sunday's coming, exactly. And that this is something that we have a freedom to not just show up on the first day of the 7th month. We can find ways, we have a freedom to find ways to celebrate and mark these things whenever we want. And I think instead we have a tendency to just kind of go, meh. We got 365 days that are all the same. I just find it fascinating that God bakes into the calendar of Israel these times when stop and think, stop and be reminded, stop and celebrate, stop and recommit. I'm going to just say it's probably okay for us to do that too, and to find those ways to do that. So, what's that?
Did we get any calls from Sunday's Advent service?
I can neither confirm nor deny an answer to your interesting question. That said, please hear well. What I'm saying is, I love the fact that it's built into we don't have a Sabbath, but there are things we're to be reminded of on a weekly basis, because this is who we are. This is what shapes us. And whatever we add to that makes us go, okay, I'm going to stop and think about this. I don't know. I'm not sure that is just automatically wrong. Because God clearly says, use the calendar, Israel, to remind yourself who you are. All right. Well, that definitely is time to go then. If we've had the bell and now we have the bell. So have a great rest of your week, and don't take any wooden nickels.